Hi, this is Peter Falcon again. I'm going to do my reflection on my recent foam rolling or neuromyofascial inhibitory techniques that were performed. I did the 10 squats and then did all the foam rolling techniques on the calves, peroneals, IT band, outer thigh, and so on and so forth that were all listed. And then performed the squats or the 10 squats after. But I guess before getting into those details, I think I wanted to just maybe start off talking about more of like recent training, injury history, athletic history, because I think that'll give everybody a better understanding of maybe why I felt what I felt. I guess first off, I am 36 years old, so as I've gotten older, obviously some of these things feel different than even I'd say 5 years ago or 7 years ago when I was probably at the peak of what I was doing training wise as a marathoner. I would say that was probably around 5 years ago or so. I was still probably hitting it pretty hard before our first son was born. But I guess to give you a little recent training history, I think that might help a lot. I still run quite a bit. I'm someone that has done up to 90, 100-mile weeks as a marathoner. Obviously, built up to that slowly. I've been a runner since I was about, technically did sprints as a fifth, sixth grader, and then moved to distance later that first season. But, didn't really find success or really didn't see I don't know, find the passion for it until I was probably in the seventh, more eighth grade, I would say. Once I got into high school, I did team sports very competitively. I was a very competitive soccer player. Played baseball, t-ball, flag football, basketball. And then it kind of narrowed down to soccer, basketball, soccer being at the top, basketball probably being second, and then track and field, cross country was third. That quickly moved up to first as I got into eighth grade and was very competitive at the national level and like the Junior Olympics, traveling all around the country with my club team. Continued to do that into high school. Was an all-state track and field cross country athlete. And then went to University of Nebraska. Obviously, you can see my background and my workout gear when I was doing these squats and these foam rolling. Stuff. So definitely a very avid Husker fan still. And then I moved on and continued to compete, I guess if you want to call it semi-professionally, for a USATF elite development club team called Lincoln Running Company, Nebraska, for many years, and still compete to a degree, but a lot less. I ended up being a 2:19 marathoner. I was close to qualifying for the trials. A 1:07 half marathoner. But anyway, I guess that leads to kind of my more recent training, which I've cut probably in half. I've lately done about 40 to 50 miles a week. I like to stay in shape. I still enjoy it and experiment with new training methods all the time. But I run about 6 days a week. The last 13 weeks of total running that I've done have included 6 days a week with a day off. That day off has included a full lift with core and mobility, another 2 days of core and mobility during the week that I do. That's all more body weight stuff, a lot of PT exercises that I've done for about 11 plus years. But the first 9 weeks of that training cycle included really just easy running, and I do 2 days alternating depending on the week of short strides with a jog or full recovery in between, or short hill sprints from 10 to 20 seconds. And then in my long run, I would do kind of what we call like 30-second like rhythm runs, or 30-second hill sprints with a jog rest about 90 seconds or so. Then the last 4 weeks, I've kind of started this kind of what we call the Norwegian singles method. So that's kind of all the rage in distance running is doing double threshold running, so lactate threshold. So I guess I'm going to speak more in running terms here, but I do about two days a week right now of single threshold running. So they kind of call it LT1 or LT2. LT1 is your sub threshold, so it's a little slower than lactate threshold, and then LT2 is kind of right out that lactate threshold. So essentially what you can run all out for about an hour or so is what they say, at least in terms of running. Cycling, it's obviously going to be a little bit different, other endurance sports, but these interval sessions are usually, I do about a 20 to 25 minute easy jog warm up. I'll do some dynamic drills also 4 to 5 days a week, so usually before these hard workouts and on a couple of the other days. And you're alternating between 3 to 4. You're doing 3 to 4 minute intervals one day, 6 to 8 minute intervals another day, and then 10 to 12 minute intervals another day with a 1 minute. I usually do a very, very slow jog rest. So the idea is there to keep heart rate up, lactate, your body's ability to get rid of lactate. It improves that. So I've done threshold work like this, but not to this extent where it's like the main core of my my workouts. And then I usually do a long run, where I'll do I've built up to about, like I said, those 12 by 30 second cruise intervals. Those for me are going to be at 5K pace down to 3K pace, race pace, or effort. I usually go by effort. And then I also do them with an incline or on hills. So if I'm outside, it's been tough to get outside as much. So I've been only outside maybe 2 or 3 days, a lot on the recovery days. And all the hard stuff is on a treadmill, which limits a lot of my pounding. But I guess that goes into my injury history. I have had Osgood-Schlatter's when I was in high school. That was the only main thing that I really had. But other than that, I was pretty healthy. But in college was where I had a lot of unfortunate stress fractures in both the left and right tibias. And later found out due to, a very smart podiatrist that worked at Nebraska and who I still see today, who's out in Sioux City, Iowa, Dr. Coffin's his name. He had experimented with a lot of PRI-based orthotics. So he finally found out that, okay, you've got hallux limitus in both those big toes. My mom actually had hallux rigidus and had surgery. Makes sense that I probably have limitus, trying to reduce the rigidus with 11 plus years of consistent PT exercises, mobility, strength training. That's really, really helped, along with these orthotics that essentially is a full-length orthotic that almost causes me to supinate and keeps the pressure off the big toe. So essentially this being my big toe, it causes me to almost put more pressure on those other phalanges or those other toes that I have. And I'm not pushing off the big toe quite as much. So that's, been a lifesaver and it's kept me actually healthier outside of college. Didn't really get probably the truly right orthotic that I've repeated probably 3 or 4 times now. They wear out every couple, maybe 2 or 3 years just because I wear them, when I'm running most of the time or if I'm walking a lot. But other than that, I don't wear them. So that's my long-winded, I guess, injury or athletic history. So kind of getting into the rolling tenderness, discomfort piece, and the squats and all those things. I guess the squats before, when I did those, I felt like my legs and body, definitely felt stiff as I expected. I did one of those threshold workouts that I explained earlier today. I think that left me with, because of that hallux limitus, less mobility and dorsiflexion range of motion in my ankles. I have very stiff ankles. I'm pretty tight in a lot of different places, I would say. I think just being a runner and years of pounding, but I think mainly really, I think a lot of it's, I've seen PTs, I've seen chiropractors, but mainly PTs and massage therapists, and a lot of them have said, hey, it's that big toe, it's that hallux limitus. That has caused a lot of those things, but like I said, I've found ways to work around it. But knees and ankles were definitely more stiff. Obviously being on a treadmill, we do have a nice commercial treadmill that we bought refurbished that goes about four flat pace or 4 minutes per mile pace, 15 miles an hour, and then 15 goes up to 15% incline. So you can get moving on that, but it's a lot easier on the body. I'll say it's kind of like running on a soft cushion track. That's what I'd compare it to. I guess other places, if I'm being specific here, specifically stiff in the quadriceps, the rectus femoris area, hamstrings, biceps femoris, the semitendinosus area, the semimembranosus, calf complex, both gastroc and soleus. I say everything else felt fine even when I was doing the squats before. But those would probably be the areas where I felt the most discomfort. Like I said, I know this is subjective. So, but after doing some foam rolling, a lot of the rolling tenderness and discomfort, I would say was kind of in some of those same areas that I mentioned: the calves, both the gastroc and the soleus, the hamstrings, biceps femoris, semitendinosus, semimembranosus, mildly sore. Adductors did not feel that in the squats before, but felt both sides a little sore when I was doing the myofascial rolling. Left calf was also a little bit more tight than the right. I seem to have more difficulties on the left side. Like at least some of the injuries, I had a hamstring strain last winter getting ready for the Eugene Marathon on the left side. Um, like I said, I don't know if that's just a muscle imbalance. Like I said, I think it really goes back down to those stiff big toes. Like I said, I guess it depends on what your theories are, whether you're, when it comes to kinetic chain, are you feet up? Are you bottom up, top down? I know everybody's a little bit different, but just giving you my own 2 cents there. Um, let's see, I guess, like I said, the workout I did today was a 25-minute easy warm up. I did 2 by 10 minutes at sub threshold with a 1 minute very short jog and then a short cool down to just over 50 minutes today. So that definitely probably, added to that tenderness or discomfort versus if I did this, maybe tomorrow or on Saturday where I'm a little more recovered. So, squats after, definitely more range of motion in most areas, I would say. You know, Upper body, like I said, even with a rolling piece, I didn't feel any soreness there. Like I said, I lift, once a week and do like a lot of body weight stuff, but don't tend to get too sore unless I go really hard or something. Ankles, I would say we're moving on the ankle joints better. There's more dorsiflexion range of motion due to my calves, the gastroc, soleus feeling more loose. I think I was able to just get more range of motion there. Looser rectus femoris and hip mobility helped improve like my leg alignment, in my opinion, which prevented that knee valgus. But I've been doing so many PT exercises for so long. I used to work at a specialty running store. We used to do some of these basic tests that were taught by PTs that would come into our store. Where you're doing a single leg squat, or having that customer do a single leg squat, making sure that knee's over that second to third toe. I felt like I had more range of motion there, so there's no knee valgus there, or at least it prevented that even more than it did, before the squats. I could squat lower, go well below the 90-degree mark, where before I felt like I could get around 90, but it definitely felt slightly uncomfortable. So, like I said, I think with that hallux limitus, it definitely affects the way I squat too. It affects a lot of things. And I was doing this obviously without shoes or anything, which I still think does help me a little bit. I normally do lift without shoes too. Let's see, I guess other things, really just felt more loose, had more range of motion everywhere. So in conclusion, I think, you do that myofascial rolling. Obviously, if I would have done a normal dynamic warm up like I would before some of my runs, like a lot of form drills, sprint drills, those sorts of things, that is one thing I've seen my range of motion increase, substantially over the last 13 weeks. Before that, I got out of the habit of that, and I would start my runs feeling stiff, but now I'm doing those before most runs, even if it's a quick 3 to 5 minute session of that, and feel great. So as you get older, good warm up is definitely helpful. These types of things, foam rolling, I do a lot of massage guns. So, Professor Batts, when you put the hypervolt stuff, I don't have a hypervolt specifically, but I have something similar, and that does wonders for me too. I do that almost every night. I think just as more of a wind down mental health thing too, before I go to bed. But that was my video. I know this is a little bit longer. I don't know. I didn't have a time limit, but hopefully that all made sense, and that gives you an idea of where I'm at based off my injury history, my athletic history, recent training, and the tests that we were able to do with inhibitory or normal neuromyofascial inhibitory techniques. Appreciate you guys listening, and look forward to commenting. Thanks.